morning. Welcome to the first regular council meeting for the municipality town or the corporation and township of Minden Hills for Thursday, January the 8th. In review of today's agenda, there'll be a closed session meeting that will take place near the end of the meeting. Madam Clerk, please proceed with a roll call.
Counselor Sisson?
Present.
Counselor Saney?
Present.
Counselor McCollum?
Present.
Counselor Johansson?
Present.
Counselor Ingram?
Present.
Deputy Mayor Shell?
Present.
Mayor Carter?
Present. We respectfully acknowledge that the Township of Minden Hills is located on Treaty 20 Michi-Sagi territory and in the traditional territory of the Michi-Sagi and Chippewa nations, collectively known as the Williams Treaties First Nations, which are Curve Lake, Rama, Hiawatha, Alderville, Scugog Island, Beausoleil, and Georgina Island First Nations. We acknowledge the shared presence of Indigenous nations throughout the area and recognize its original Indigenous inhabitants as the stewards of its lands and waters since time immemorial. I call this meeting to order at 9:01 a.m. Madam Clerk, please read the resolution for the approval of the agenda.
Moved by Counselor Saney, seconded by Counselor Ingram. Be it resolved that the January 8th, 2026 regular council meeting agenda be approved as circulated.
All those in favor? That is carried. Are there any declarations of pecuniary interest? Seeing none. Move to the adoption of minutes from previous meetings. Members of council, any comments or amendments? Seeing none, please read the resolution.
Moved by Counselor Sisson, seconded by Counselor McKelvey. Be it resolved that council approves the following minutes. December 11th, 2025, regular council meeting minutes. December 11th, 2025, public meeting minutes for application PLZBA 2025091. December 15th, 2025, special meeting minutes for the 2026 mayoral budget, and December 15, 2025, public meeting minutes for the mayoral budget.
All those in favor? That is carried. Payment of accounts will be in the January 22nd meeting. In terms of a mayor's report, don't have much to say. We're obviously right in the midst of budget. We had a special meeting earlier this week, and the budget will be wrapped up in the next couple of weeks. Councillor Saney, Roma Board, apparently you're having a conference of some sort.
That's rumor is true. Yes, we are having a conference coming up once again. I have about 3 or 4 pages of reports, so I'll try to synopsis. Okay. It has been extremely busy even before we went on holidays. It started picking up with the issues around the conservation authorities. When we have the province now trying to take 36 conservation authorities and merge them into just about 7 other regional authorities. So there is a lot of questions about the oversight and good practices that have been done by conservation areas and what the province might be doing here. So we've been paying a lot of attention to that, and I've been working particularly with the Kawartha Lakes, Halliburton Kawartha Lakes source water protection conservation area as well on these issues, and making sure that our concerns are put forward. So that's been one of the focuses, along with the conference coming up and the planning of that. At the conference itself, I've been encouraging and trying to get more arts and culture highlighted, because this is so critical, in my opinion, to democracy in our world. It's not just about mental health and artistic expression. It's also an economic driver, and it also has to do with a form of democracy where we can take art as groups and differences and talk about it outside of that kind of debate that becomes so political and often divisive. So we are going to be having a session on that I'll be chairing. So I'm really looking forward to that, and also trying to make sure that it focuses on rural arts and culture, because oftentimes some of the issues that we get back is it's not focused enough on rural. Some of our workshops need to be making sure that we focus on our rural content there. So that's one of the things we've also been working on. Of course, the rural schools are an issue because of the closures and the moratorium on the closures coming up. So we did have a meeting with 2 of the ministers Paul Calandris, who was, of course, the Minister of Education, but through our meeting with Minister Flack and Minister Thompson, we were assured that this moratorium, when it is lifted, is not going to be the closing of our schools in rural areas. So that has been a really important issue for many of our rural areas. And so this was confirmed. We did have these meetings with the two ministers prior to our conference, because at our conference, there are an inordinate number of delegations already, and we didn't want to be part of that kind of mass. We wanted to make sure that these issues were heard clearly and that we could do this outside the meeting. So we did have a pre-meeting with those ministers on several of our issues of concern. The other items that are under consideration include the OMARS. And OMARS is changing its governance method. It's the Roma board, and we were briefed on the provincial changes with OMARS pension plan. And we're very concerned that we're starting to get the politics and good planning for financial planning mixed up. And we want to make sure that doesn't happen as the province is changing how OMARS is going to work. We're going to have a special session on that. I'm hoping those people here that are attending that will come back, and maybe at our next meeting after the conference, someone other than me can present what's happening at OMARS as well, because this is going to affect, municipalities generally about 40% are the contributors to the OMARS. So this is going to affect that municipalities more than it's going to affect other areas and branches, because we pay in about, our employees about 40% of that makeup of that OMARS. So I do have a slide deck I could share. I didn't get it in time to share with this meeting to give some highlights, but I think if we could put that on the future agenda and have other people attending the conference present that back would be excellent. One of the things that we saw and that we're informed about was the Renfrew County Paramedic Chief Mike Nolan did a presentation on how Renfrew County is using paramedics in terms of mental health and addiction challenges and all the community calls that are out there, and a model that seems to be working extremely well for them. So that was presented as one method to address rural areas in health. And they seem to be extremely pleased with how they are organizing that, and the communities seem to be very pleased with that. So the other opportunities to meet with our cabinet ministers are going to be there at Roma. Let's make sure we raise our voices on our concerns. And of course, I'm just to mention AMO because some of the work with AMO is continuing, but the one thing that I think we just need to keep, I might use the word harping on, is the social and economic prosperity review, because all the downloading that continues to take place, we are seeing that every day. We're challenges. We're in the middle of trying to do a budget right now with what we have. We're, I think, in my opinion, shortchanging our staff because we're getting all these downloads that make our taxes increase. And we can't keep doing that. So we got to stop downloading the housing issues, and we need a new social economic prosperity review. The one that was 100 years old was just not working anymore. So that's about all I have to say for now, but I appreciate your time and I look forward to the conference. And I think everybody will be quite pleased with the selection of sessions to attend, and the fact also that we have divided up what's called as the bear pit, where all the ministers, that's a slang word, okay, where all the ministers are on stage and people at the mics can ask questions. They can't ask about their particular area, but general questions that affect all of rural areas. So that has been very successful every year. And then people learn about the commonalities they have. This year, what we've done is we divided those two sections up into areas. So we have two groups. So not all the ministers at once, like half the ministers at a time. And so we think that's going to be more effective, and people have more opportunity to ask questions, and specifically to the ministers that are looking at them. So this is the first time we've tried that. And I'm really pleased that we're doing it at the Sheridan again. The Sheridan has really been great over the years in terms of people are familiar with it. Sometimes people say, why don't we have a rural conference in rural areas? Well, show me where 2,000 people can fit in Halliburton, and we will have one here, you know. So that's all I have to say for now. Thanks.
Thank you. Correspondence and communications. There's a resolution from to appoint the City of Kawartha Lakes Planning Officer for Environmental Policy, Jenna Stevens, as the Kawartha Halliburton Municipal Representative on the Trent Conservation Coalition Source Protection Committee. Not sure what the acronym would be for that, but are there any questions or comments? Councillor Saini?
Yes, I'm really pleased that she's up for this nomination again. She is the person who taught me the basics when I first started on the Source Water Protection Board. And she is an incredible technician and knows this work really well and has been there for a number of years. So I really highly recommend that we support this resolution.
Any other comments? Seeing none, please read the resolution.
Moved by Counselor Saini, seconded by Counselor Ingram, that council receives correspondence from the Kawartha Halliburton Source Protection Authority seeking endorsement of a Kawartha Halliburton municipal representative as information. And that the Township of Minden Hills Council endorsed the City of Kawartha Lakes Planning Officer, Environmental Policy, Jenna Stevens, as the Kawartha Halliburton municipal representative on the Trent Conservation Coalition Source Protection Committee.
All those in favor? That is carried. Ms. Blanchard, I understand you're carrying the weight of the finance. Yes, I'll let you join us, Madam CAO.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and members of council. First off, Mr. Drinkwalter sends his regrets. Apologizes for not being here, but he is very much under the weather. So Ms. Blanchard, we've tagged in, who has been working with our finance team throughout this process. So the council, today is a follow-up to the meeting we had 2 days ago on January 6th. Since that time, staff have compiled the amendments that council has proposed to the December 15th mayoral budget, and those amendments which were supported by the majority of members of council. What Ms. Blanchard will do today is walk us through the impacts of those amendments. So comparing to the December 15th presentation versus where we are today. So operating or day-to-day services and those supporting resources, capital, which is our infrastructure investment, and then landing really on the overall tax rate and where we are sitting today. Following that presentation and any comments or conversation, Mr. Mayor, then I can provide council with the next steps in the process. So I'm going to turn it over to our financial guru.
Good morning, council. So I'm just going to get Works Department to pop that up on the screen. We'll go with the amendment, I think, first. Yeah. This is the summary that Zach has prepared. So at the meeting where all of these items were discussed, we're both kind of keeping track of what was going to ultimately impact the tax levy and what items were just a movement from one source of funding to another without any actual impact. So I will go through each one of them individually here on the list. So the first item is the Clear Lake culvert. So that was a new item added to taxes. So it it's noted that it would be funded through reserves, so no impact to the levy. The second two items were adjustments to the to the boardwalk, the Riverwalk Boardwalk. So the first discussion was in reference to, sorry, that was the lighting. I should clarify that. That's the lighting on the boardwalk. So the first discussion was about the initial $142,000 to actually remove and replace that lighting. So that item has been removed. It was initially going to be funded from reserves. So again, no impact to the levy. And then it was decided that we would add, however, $50,000 to the budget in order to actually remove the lighting as a first step. So again, being funded from reserves. The Snowden Park, there is no change on that one. That is the walk, the short walk. Anyways, no impact there other than the source of funding. So instead of funding that initially from the surplus, it's coming from reserves. The next item is the ERP project, and that is a project that's in conjunction with the county. And initially that was going to be funded from the surplus. It is now going to be funded from the finance reserves. So no impact to the levy. Asset management software, same with that one, now being funded from reserves instead of surplus. The sale of capital initially was recognized as a revenue item in the roads department and was going to be used to just general operating. That has been, so the sale of the items is still in the budget as a revenue item, but instead of just following to reduce the tax levy, it will now be moved to reserves. So I've noted on the schedule here that reserve impact is 0, but I have confirmed that Zach did actually increase the contribution to reserves in the schedules. The Nichols Road project initially was going to be funded from reserves. It has been changed as a tax levy item. So that's the $57,150. The backup generator for CSD department, it initially was going to be funded. The recommendation was from debt, and that has just been moved as a contribution from reserves. And again, that will have no impact on the revenue. Organics program. So there's 2 components to this one. They're placed one after the other on the schedule. So the removal of the actual Molochs themselves, which were going to be funded, and as well the removal of additional operating costs for $20,000. So that has an impact to the levy, which actually reduces the amount that we're going to go to the ratepayers for. The bulldozer, which is the next item, it was going to be funded from the surplus, and it has been moved. The removal of the, there was a motion to remove the pickup truck for environmental, and it was defeated. Public Works pickup, that's the next item on the list. It has been removed. It was initially going to be funded from surplus, and so again, no impact to the levy. Fire department had a construction of a storage shed for $19,775. It has also been removed. It was funded from surplus. That has been removed as well, so no impact to the levy. The roads operating budget included an addition, the addition of another staff person, and that was in connection with the purchase of the pickup truck. That item has been removed. That item has an impact to the levy, so it has reduced the amount of money that we would go to the ratepayer for. Sidewalk, this was a split on the crosswalk project. So So the total of the project is $500,000. So 470 of that project has been removed from the reserves. And the balance, $300,000 has been added to commence some initial work on the project. And that is showing as being funded now from the taxes. So that has an impact and an increase in the environment. The next two items as well, the Laughlin Hall. The motion was to increase the amount coming from taxation for that project, which is $50,000. And the second item, which was a brand new item, was to also go to the tax levy for $50,000 to commence some work on that project. The next two items were initiatives at the county, and these two amounts are our share of both of those projects. And both of those numbers have been confirmed with the county staff. So you see there 11,138 for the GIS project, 18,750 for the official plan. And both of those items are going to come through the tax levy, and so that results in increase as well. The accessibility buttons was a new item that was discussed, and at the time of the meeting, we didn't have a number on that, but Zach has confirmed that. So we're looking at that as an addition, but again, that is going to be funded from reserves, so no impact to the levy. The facility use grant, that was an item that was discussed at the meetings. It is grant use of the facility. So in order to track it within our system, we log the expense line, and then it is offset with revenue that's booked through the system. So the idea is that we're able to track it, but it has no impact to the budget. However, we did need to increase the revenue line on that, just get those two items to match up. So that was a reduction in the levy because we've increased revenues. Second item as well is a reduction in the levy because we increased revenues. And that was a motion to add some additional short-term rental revenues into the budget. The next two items are just a switch from one project to the other. So we added $130,000 for slurry seal in the roads department, and we removed the Bethel Church road project. Both of those items have impact to the levy. One is going to increase the levy, one is going to reduce it. So the final item on this first section of the list is the amount of money that is required, $40,242. It's required to increase the amount of money coming from the levy to support new capital projects, and it matches to the 2025 amount. Okay, the next two items in the next section, they were housekeeping items. So they were items that, and review items. So they were items that staff went through their budgets and decided that there could be some adjustments made. So from a revenue perspective, we added $57,830. And from an expenditure perspective, we actually reduced expenditures. So both of those items that total $60,000 resulted in a reduction to the levy requirement. So the overall change from the meeting is a increase in the levy requirement of $40,250. So the original budget, the bottom of the schedule, is $12,326,645. and you added another $40,250, you net $12,366,895. So that will be your new levy requirement. And just a reminder to council that when you compare that to the 2025 levy, which was $11,745,781, you have an increase of $621,114. That represents a 5.29% increase in the levy. What I'd also like to just point out, because we provided that information in the first round of discussions in December, is that of that number, there's an increase to the policing requirement of $213,563. So that is 1.882%. We had an increase to the 1.5% levy that was going into capital, or into reserves for capital projects. That is 41,949. So that's a 0.36%. So when you remove those two items out of there, just because they're unique, you end up with 365,602, which is a 3.11%. If that's of any help at all. And also, we could take an opportunity to review the 5.29% against assessment, what your rate, and it comes back to 4.29. So there's always this kind of 1% variance between what we are increasing the levy by versus what the tax rate itself increased by. And again, that's because you had about a 1% increase in assessment growth. So it shoulders some of that that additional levy requirement. So I'm happy to take any questions on this schedule or to move on to the next one. Okay, so move on to the next schedule, which is the capital summary. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this one, only because we've gone through a lot of the items that got adjusted and moved between sources of funding. I guess what I will point out is a couple of things. Number one is that initially at the discussion of the budget the other day, which date is that? 2 days ago. So we were still looking to go to the surplus for $187,000 was roughly that. And you'll see on this schedule that we have reduced that to $137,000. And I also want to point out that the $40,000 that I mentioned in the previous schedule, $40,242, which was the amount it was going to take to bring the capital items being funded from taxation. So that's that $40,000. It is shown on this schedule, and it's been assigned to the pickup truck in the environmental department. So you'll see there that we've listed the cost of the truck at $70,000. We're going to go to taxation for that $40,242. So that's going to bring your total taxation amount, which is a combination of levy and the gas tax and the OCIF, right? Because OCIF and gas tax are being budgeted in the operating side, but we are going to pull those two grants over to support capital projects. So that 42,000 gets you to a match to last year's budget on the amount coming from the taxation. So that reduces the amount of money required to support that pickup truck, $70,000. Going to take the balance from the surplus. So that is one of the reasons why the surplus requirement went from 187 down to 137. So I don't think there's anything else there, and unless council has some questions. The format of this report is very similar to what had been presented at the December 15th meeting. And, you know, you're seeing where the total amount of capital projects and how much is being funded from reserves, surplus, grants, and the debt. And then the balance, of course, is coming from the levy. So unless council has any questions about.
Not so much a question, just, well, I guess it is. It's a question to council, and it goes back to this. Utilizing the surplus that we really don't know what it is. Do I think we have $137,000 in 24, 25? Absolutely. Is this what we wanted to put it to? And I just want to give you an example. Columbarium. Cemetery columbarium is a great idea. Cemetery has a reserve. I think it would be better used for the purchase of these, for the purchase of this expenditure. And then as you sell off from the columbarium, it goes into the cemetery as revenue and could end up going back to increase their reserve. The next example would be the furnace at Irondale. Again, we have a reserve. It would be the proper use of it to pay for our furnace. The 30,000 for the Water Street dock. I don't know why, but I had it in my mind we were going to use cash in lieu of parkland. What's that? Cash in lieu of parkland, I thought was going to be used for the Water Street dock.
And through you, Mr. Mayor, I think when Mr. Drinkwalter and Ms. Blanchard looked at the amount in lieu of parkland, there wasn't enough to fund everything.
Okay. The pickup truck for environmental services, again, we're putting money in the budget every year for a reserve transfer at the Scotch Line landfill. Now, I mean, that's primarily where that's going to be servicing. We're adding $90,000 to that reserve this year. We've been putting substantial amounts in there, so I'm just not sure that the budget that is showing, again, coming from an unknown surplus couldn't come from their actual reserve. We definitely will have a surplus. I don't doubt that for 1 minute. I would like council to be able to put that to a big project or future debt, that sort of thing. You know, we've got probably 3.25% in debt payments in 2027. Hopefully we could have enough surplus to get some of the financing of that down. The debt payments are going to be Splash Line Transfer Station. We're looking at a couple $100,000. The Bob Cage and Scotch Line Road. Once we get to that point, so those are going to be impacts to next year's budget. Lachlan Hall to venture be covered by what we're putting into the budget this year. But so I would just like council to consider changing the financing some of these projects. I'm not trying to put them. It's just the financing.
I guess, Mr. Mayor, I might ask Ms. Blanchard. I heard comment from both you and our treasurer that from your standpoint, you're looking at surpluses and reserves sort of similarly, if
Interchangeably.
Yeah.
So, yes, because, you know, historically, in my time here, you got to the end of the year you came up with a surplus, which is not necessarily what you see on the set of financial statements, but from a cash accrual perspective, we're always, because that's how we work internally, you end up with a surplus or deficit. That amount of money would come before council with some recommendations on what to do with that surplus. So it would be a matter of, sometimes that surplus would be made up of, specific amounts of funding received that have not been spent, that you're going to, you can move into reserves, pull it back out for the next year as you go to finish the project. We do have a specific capital reserve. It was just a general capital reserve. A lot of times the bulk of the surplus would go into that with no specific designation into one department or the other. So, lots of variations on how the surplus was handled. I mean, in my time as a treasurer, I've seen townships that literally go through each department and say, your surplus, your department has this much of a surplus. We're going to give that to you, and we go down the list of each department, what they did not spend in the year. So in my head, and I think also in Zach's, they're interchangeable in terms of how they're handled. So, but if philosophically, you want to be able to say, oh, we had a $900,000 surplus, and we want to specifically designate that in terms of the amount of money some point in time to a particular project. And you would move that into the capital reserve. But at the end of the day, I guess what I'm trying to say here is, from an accounting perspective, you are always trying to get your budget to balance to zero, and you get your final results to balance to zero. And the way of doing that is to take that surplus or that deficit and move it into or out of reserves to make that happen. Very similar to your water and wastewater system. You make it balance from a budget perspective and from an actual final perspective by moving funds in reserves. Not to say you can't carry a surplus in the balance sheet, but historically, it's always been, the methodology has been to book it off into reserves.
Sandy?
Yeah, you, as we've been going through this budget process, I'm really missing, rest in peace, our previous mayor's approach. That had us with the mayor meeting with every department, but also a member of council within that particular area of the budget, part of that meeting with each of that category. So someone would be of council would work with roads department, with the mayor and the staff. And when we didn't get to that budget number that we're looking for, that we think is reasonable as an increase, then that would go back to the department and to management to figure out how to work within the budget, as opposed to us trying to direct staff through saying what you can have and not have. So I think fundamentally, we are crossing a line by trying to manage staff through budget in this particular process, where the other process had more staff involvement. So if we said to staff, look, you've got to come within this budget, they would be able to, with their ingenuity and with their professionalism of what's required under law, under good management, to be able to come back with those changes. So this has been a very difficult way to approach it. So I missed my good old days, even though I had my own complaints, and everybody knows that those were the days where the budgets were much more reasonable in terms of staff input to get the percentages that we need and to be really operational. in this case, you know, it was almost like the Strong Mayors Act, but it was, everybody had a participation in it. So it wasn't under that kind of legislation. So here, what we're doing, and I don't fully agree with this budget. I'm concerned that some of the things that we're seeing, we just had a reserve fund study that's saying, hey, we're in trouble for the next few years when a lot of us won't be around this table anymore. And we're pulling a whole lot from reserves. So we're going against what we paid a lot of money for to find out about how our reserves are in trouble. So I'm very concerned, particularly with the cut to our services with our roads and not being able to do the basics that we are advised need to be done, and also the cut to the environmental, because I think environmental responsibility is something that our community supports. So I don't know where that would make changes here specifically, but I think that's something that if we could ask the mayor to consider when they're evaluating all this, that would be good. Thank you.
Just a couple of things. One, you know, our reserves are not in trouble. So we have a need for, in our asset management plan to be able to contribute monies, get enough money to maintain our assets over, you know, the next couple of decades. But in terms of our reserves right now, we aren't in trouble. And the other point, I'm not really certain, maybe I fully understood what you were saying, but you know, obviously the departments work on their own budgets here, and they, you know, staff work together to come up with numerous iterations before we got to the point where that you're seeing. I mean, it was not. There was an awful lot of work there by each of the departments. Councilor McKelvey?
So, using surplus or pulling from reserves, I'm not dying. I'm just pointing out, and particularly cemetery, it has its own rules and regulations, and the columbarium should be paid from those reserves. I'm not going to worry about it. As for the amount of money we're pulling out of reserves, yes, we are pulling a lot of money out of reserves, but we're doing a lot of capital there too. So, and these are the reserves are being used for what they're intended to be used for. That, you know, if you're going to put a new roof on the library, cultural center, you would use the reserve that we've been building up all the road to do that. Just one of the many examples. As far as the increase goes, Ms. Blanchard pointed out the policing, and I would really like us to realize that policing increase was a terrible hit to us, but it wasn't our decision. It was the provincial government, in my opinion, the blame needs to go there. So really, of the 5.29%, our responsibility is only 3.47. And the other 1.82% increase is for the OPP increase. I will not ever agree to us reducing operating costs to try and absorb. You know, would have been nice to get to zero, yeah, but I don't think that would be realistic in today's. I'm quite happy with what's happened here. Clearly, we're not finished. I believe the mayor will have some veto suggestions, perhaps. I don't know. I don't know where we're going after this. Right now, I can live with this budget, and I can defend this budget.
Councilor Sam?
Just to clarify, I don't think we're on a different page in terms of the process, but I think the difference is that we had the staff input as opposed to, say, deciding if we're going to get a truck or not. That went back to, say, balancing with other things in their budget to maybe change it. So there's just a little bit of a different process that we have, because we're trying to make those staff changes at the table here and how they work, as opposed to within those meetings with just the department and the mayor and one council member. But it's just a different process. But in terms of the reserves, then I'm not sure what that reserve study was about that we had. If we're saying that, I'm not saying we're not in good health with reserves right now, because we are, obviously. But that study showed us that we've got to do some introspection about how we're going to sustain this. Thank you.
Mr. McKelvey.
Just to clarify, we didn't have a reserve study. We had an asset management plan, and maybe that's what you're thinking. And clearly it told us we
Yes.
need to start spending more money on our assets. And have we done that? Not as much as we'd like to, I'm sure. I mean, asset management plan showed us pretty well draining our reserves, so we haven't done that, thank goodness. I worked hard to make sure that our capital levy stayed the same because I don't want to go backwards on that. So I just needed to clarify that it wasn't a reserve study. We need to have a reserve policy, but that's a whole other beast.
That's right.
I just wanted to say, from an accounting perspective, you have this column here that's saying you're looking for a surplus to make it happen. From accounting perspective, would I move it to the reserve column? I would, because to load a budget where you're waiting for a surplus to happen, to finance something means that you're actually not in budget, right? Because you're hoping something's going to happen. Is it likely to happen? Yes. But to make it clean and simple, I would call that reserves. Then and I know Zach's not here and I wish he was, but because I don't think he would disagree with me on this because we've had this conversation. But I think that then when you know what your surplus is and you know what your reserves are, there's the opportunity to look at each one of those and your surplus and say, do we think we need to top up this reserve or that reserve? Acknowledging that some of this, a good chunk of this is going to be funded by reserves. I mean, there's an opportunity at that point, which I hope is going to happen in the, not too future, to get that information. So I just don't know, to be honest with you, how we do that today, if that requires, given the new process of how this works, that change would actually be.
I think that we're in a very unique situation here. Normally, at the time of budget, we'd be talking about the previous year's surplus, like we'd be talking about 25 surplus or expectation surplus. We're in a weird situation here where we still haven't finalized 23 and 24. So it's a unique situation. I mean, we've got back of the envelope calculations that'll show the reserve, but I think that, right, I mean, take it out of surpluses into reserve. I mean, like you say, they are interchangeable. And I think that's why we pay accountants and finance people to be able to handle our money. I'm perfectly willing to allow the experts to handle our money. Any other questions, Councilor McKelvey?
Okay, but I think Lori made a good point, and it's the same point I've been trying to make. We are budgeting a revenue under a surplus column that we really shouldn't have. So, because we don't know what the surplus is, and when we do know that, council should be deciding at that point what to do with that money. As for 23, we do know what the surplus was, and we directed it go to two different places, and then go to the debt for the Scotch Line Book. I'm hoping that we will be able to have that discussion again when the surplus is known for 24 and for 25, that we can perhaps lower the cost of 2024. That's the big project, so I'd like to see that. I'm prepared to put forth an amendment to the mayoral budget to change the financing showing on here from surplus to becoming. Like I said, I'm not dying on this.
CAO.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor, and I think good discussion. And I think to Councillor McKelvey's point, if there is a want to change the funding, I don't think you're hearing resistance from our finance staff. So it may be, I'll just look to the clerk that there's an amendment to fund those or those items from reserves instead of surplus.
So from a clerk's perspective, if we passed a motion at the previous meeting and we've actually said that the funding comes from surplus or comes from reserves, that's a reconsideration because you've already passed that motion. But if you. Sorry,
Didn't pass a motion for this one. These were in the original. there.
that's what I'm, so. But if it's outside of that and it's something that we haven't done, we can easily enact a motion today. Sorry, that's what I was going to say. Yes, if you want to put a motion on the floor and it's not reconsidering anything that you've already passed, then that's fine.
Just that I'll second that. So do from reserves and change that from surplus.
Yep. No. Plus, I'm looking at the.
And the mover and the seconder, was it Councillor McKelvey and Deputy Mayor Shaw? Is that okay? So I'm just gonna read what I crafted. That the 2026 mayoral budget be amended to change the capital projects funding from surplus to reserves in the amount of $137,258. Are you comfortable with that, Councilor McKelvey and Deputy Mayor Shaw? Okay. Moved by Councilor McKelvey, seconded by Deputy Mayor Shaw, that the 2026 mayoral budget be amended to change the capital projects funding from surplus to reserves in the amount of $137,258.
All those in favor? It's carried. Councilor McKelvey?
Just another question, and I know I haven't asked this. But I still don't understand it. Underwater capital shows servicing 100,000, and it's showing us half of it from reserves and half of it from a cost sharing other. And I still don't understand it, so I don't know if somebody could just clarify.
So that was placed on the schedule. It was a placeholder really, in reference to the possibility that we need to do some servicing water, wastewater. To just like some system to a point. So say there wasn't a discussion on that. There with the potential of some sharing of all have the reserves. What reserves that would be, I guess, for much bigger conversation down the road.
This isn't really towards the budget, but it can be in the future. A question towards then. So when I built a house on Window Street years ago, I had to pay the township for what it would cost for me to hook into it and then therefore carry on monthly frontage fee. So when Triple HS comes and hooks into this, they're not actually going to be responsible for what the actual cost would be towards those of us who are on the water and sewer system currently. So like for me, it's in, let's say it's $500. I don't know what the actual number was, but let's say it's $500. I pay the $500. For Triple HS, considering the size of and the scope of the project, let's say it costs $50,000. Are they going to pay $50,000? Are we waiving that as a municipality? Or is that going on the backs of the people who currently pay into the water and sewer system?
Well,
I think, Mr. Mayor, those are discussions we would have with council when we strike agreements with any development that would happen. I mean, you've raised all the good questions that we would have to consider in terms of making a recommendation to council.
Except that the only problem is it's already in the works. So when is that, is that going to happen? Because I'm nervous that there's an assumption. And considering that it is hospital, well, it's not hospital, it'll be long-term care, but same idea, healthcare. But they're gonna come to us and as a municipality and want us to waive that fee. It's not on the agenda today. It's just something to take away that jumped out at me when Roy was just talking about servicing and cost.
they
It-
up,
It really is
Agenda.
for today. I think it would be, it will be part of our follow-up conversation about how we deal with multi-unit billing and that sort of thing. So it's a great question, and it is a conversation we need to have with council.
Councilman Kobe.
I'm not sure if it's here or in a couple minutes or what it is, but we still need to discuss the water budget, I thought. Because like it was identified that the capital that's in the mayoral budget that we received isn't really the capital that's going to be required. So I had thought that we would get another update on that. In the absence of that, it would appear we're just agreeing to the mayoral budget. But I can't really put forward an amendment saying I don't agree with that. We would have to put changes, but I don't know what those would be because we haven't received it. This is not a criticism of staff. We have put this budget process in the middle of Christmas season, holidays, all the worst timing possible, but I'm concerned that the water and wastewater budget is not back on here to discuss.
So that conversation was just about the carryover Paul Jackson. Mr. Timmons to see if he was able to get us some funding.
Thank you, Mayor Carter. What I have been able to find, obviously, in a short turnaround. The only, sorry, I was, needed. Bear with. So as council knows, the tertiary filter rehab was the one that came in over budget at 196,000. We had budgeted at 100,000, so that has been will be a carryover. The well inspection as well as a carryover for $30,000. The bid amount or the budget amount is still expected to be the same. Pumping station, they did an initial evaluation of that this year. They did determine that there's some additional investigation due again at this time, given a quick turnaround since last meeting. I don't know specifically what that will be, but that will be carried over as well. That, however, has not been awarded or anything to this point, so I don't want to get into numbers there, but we will get a project number hopefully in the spring and we'll be able to move forward. So those are the three carryovers: with the pumping station, the well inspections, and the tertiary filter rehab. And that final one is underway, will be within the next couple of weeks here, and we'll get that rolling. I don't have a ton of other information, but those are that's the high level.
Mr. Mayor, if I may, I think the other question that council had was the comment that one of the presenters from Aqua made about a percentage increase for our contract. Ms. Blanchard and I have gone back and we have a draft contract proposal from Aqua that we will be meeting with them and negotiating that will eventually come to council. But I can tell you it's nowhere near, I don't know, Ms. Blanchard, if you remember the percentage, but it's not 9%, which was something that was put before council. It's similar to,
The proposal. So. we're- it's a- So it's a 4.77% increase. And you also need to keep in mind that's not reflected though in the budget because it's a split year, right? So you're going to operate for the first 5 months under the old pricing because it doesn't even until
June.
1st, yeah. And so you've got 5 months at the current pricing and 7 months at the proposed new pricing. So you're not going to see that when you look at the budget, you're not going to see 4.77% increase for Aqua.
So what we put in the, or what you put in the draft rear budget doesn't reflect all these other things. And I realize it's going to come from reserve most likely, but without knowing what those reserves are, it's very tough. So I'm just not sure where we're at here, the chicken and egg and.
I think Mr. Simmons can
Through the
speak to the
chair,
reserve.
again, sort of rough numbers, and Mr. Walter can, I'm sure, provide more accurate numbers when the time comes. But at the time of the awarding of the tertiary filter rehab, which was months ago, we were roughly 1.4 million on the wastewater. And I think we're comfortably above a million on the water side as well. So I'm sure we can bring more specifics back, but I know we're above a million on both. So 1.4 and I think maybe 1.2 or something on the water side, something like that. But again, don't quote me on that, but
So the way I see this, then we're gonna pass a budget that's not really realistic. It's gonna show that we're way over the expenses that we planned. And at the end of the year, I guess we get to bring in reserves to. Council makes the decision on the reserves.
Well, I don't think it's wildly inaccurate.
Well, I don't see the reason for inspection. So that's a government.
yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Just-
And wasn't there a 315 that hadn't come forward?
And this bill, the very first meeting, was closed to- Number I voted. These waters. 30. Water side between the building and the well.
Yeah. That's
So
what I wrote
whatever
down.
this, so the difference.
So, and just to kind of make this make sense, pumping station was estimated at 115,000, so then 10, those are your two projects.
So all I'm saying is that in our budget, we're not reflecting those projects. So do I have to put forth an amendment? Do we just carry on and know that at the end of the year, we're going to be way over budget on our expenses and council will have to decide to bring in more reserve? As it will be council's decision on the reserve. Oh, and we're going to be lame duck us. Yes.
Add it.
Mhm.
Add it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I say add it, because it was already part of last year's budget. So it's not like you're trying to decide whether to do it at all. You'd already approved it last year. It's just that it's a carryover similar to, some other projects that you've had noted as carryovers and we've done that. So
So we added, it gets removed from reserves and we don't change the rates that were recommended. So it's just changing some of the internal numbers.
Yep.
But
So,
no impact to the levy.
so perhaps Mr. Timmons, you can reiterate the projects for our clerk in terms of,
So what I have is the tertiary, is that how you say it?
Tertiary.
Tertiary, sorry, and then the well project, and then you'd mentioned the pumping station. I mean, we can spell them out, or we can put the aqua capital projects carryover. It's up to council what you want in the resolution. Do you want them separate, or do you want just the aqua 2025 carryover capital projects? Yeah, like we can. Okay. Oh, I just forgot. That's right. Yeah. And the
you'll
pump
spell
house, right?
Somebody else will do the
Pumping
math.
station.
I'll do the spelling if somebody else will do the math. That sounds perfect.
So are we putting 115 for the pumping station? Is that what we're, although you didn't know what it was going to be?
That would be.
Right.
So the total amount is one. Well, it's a, we can,
Let's just have.
it's fine.
Fine, we will take a break until. We'll let them craft the resolution if we need to change it. We'll take a break till 10:25.
I was
We'll
just.
take a break until 10:25.
So if I may, I'll read the resolution first, but I will need a mover and a seconder. That the 2026 mayoral budget be amended to include the following Aqua Township capital projects. Ward Street Pumping Station, 115,000, well inspection, 30,000, and the tertiary filter rehab, 196,000. Sorry? To be 196? 196,000. Yeah, to be funded from reserves.
I thought it was at least 200, just so you know, because it was plus tax, I think. For that tertiary,
Tertiary, yeah.
that one. So
so
I
the
would
one that I had-
suggest you put at least 200.
200, yeah, 200. Just a minute. To be funded from reserves.
As opposed to the, oh, no,
We don't have to, yeah, because we didn't do an initial, yeah. So I just need a mover and a seconder though. Counselor Sisson. So moved by Counselor Sisson, seconded by Deputy Mayor Shell, that the 2026 mayoral budget be amended to include the following Aqua Township capital projects. Ward Street Pumping Station, 115,000, well inspections, 30,000, the tertiary filter rehab, 200,000 to be funded from reserves.
I think we're finished, council. So if there are no more discussion, no more amendments related to our budget, this would then complete the amendment period, the 30-day amendment period. Following today, the mayor has 10 days to take away all of the amendments to the original budget to consider them. Should the mayor veto any of the amendments, so that 10-day period is called a veto period. Should the mayor choose to veto any of the amendments, must be circulated to council members in writing and posted publicly, those vetoes with rationale. So that would take us to January 18th. Following January 18th, if there are any vetoes, council would have 15 days to decide whether you want to override any of the vetoes. And that would take us to February 3rd. If you notify us of that, we need to call a meeting on February 3rd. And then there is, council members would vote on the overrides. And there needs to be a 2/3 majority of council to support the overrides. Following all of that, we have a budget. A budget would be adopted. And if you need any more detail or have questions after this meeting, I'm happy to try and answer them.
Councilor McKelvey.
Did we set a date in case? Well, you've got us all sitting around the table.
Right. Well, here's the thing. Either party can choose to shorten those timeframes, or if the timeframes are played out, really February 3rd is the day. Is that correct?
Through the chair, that is correct. And honestly, at the end of the day, the clerk's department, when we call special meetings, we reach out to all members of council seeking quorum anyway. So we would still send out that email. But again, February 3rd is your last day. So
Right.
Go ahead.
Shouldn't we just at least get a feel anybody says I'm not available, then we
We-
might need to do it on February 2nd.
Yeah, no, we can certainly do that. It's,
Maybe we don't have to do any
Yep.
of this, but I'd rather save staff the time checking around with
Yep.
all of us, and then one says, no,
it's a good idea.
I'm in Barbados. You know,
You are?
just in case. No, it's not me, but you know, somebody might. So, does anybody have a conflict with February 3rd? Well, there you go. Okay, so. 30th or the 29th. You could just waive the veto.
He's looking at his
He's
calendar.
ignoring me.
I'm sorry, did you have a question?
Good answer.
Mention you could waive the veto and then we don't have.
So I think Counselor McKelvey has suggested the 29th being the Thursday. Or shall we earmark that, Madam Clerk?
I'm just checking the council chambers just to make, like, we'll make it work regardless,
Yeah.
but,
Exactly.
um. No. So that's fine.
Okay, so we will tentatively put that in people's calendars. Absolutely.
Really? Yes, go ahead.
If you shorten up your 10 days, what's that do to us? Maybe I should just quit doing the what ifs.
Yeah, I think this is a first year learning
Yeah.
of a new process. I have seen municipalities where the council and the mayor have agreed on the front end as to what the schedule is going to be, you know, and if you don't put forward more than X amendments, I won't veto, and you know, all kinds of things. I think we've been through a lot this week. I think everybody just needs to go away and kind of take a deep breath. And if I were in the mayor's shoes, I'd just want to take a little bit of time and kind of get my head around that list. I think to your point, Councillor McKelvey, if one was to shorten a period, then the period for the next group starts right after that shortened period, right?
So through the chair, just as a heads up, so staff will send those invites out, so that it's in your calendars after the meeting today, okay?
Okay. Planning and development.
Good morning, Mr. Mayor and council.
I'm
Jeez, look at
not
the
sure your
time.
mic is on. I
It
know.
says
you-
it's on. Through you, Mr. Mayor, I have nothing to add or say. Short and sweet.
Are there any questions on any of these?
I was just going to say, through the chair, member of council didn't request any of the items being pulled, so it can just be a consent resolution if council's comfortable with that.
Read the resolution.
Okay. Moved by Councillor Saney, seconded by Councillor Johansson, that council receive the following Salish Shore Road Allowance applications and planning reports as information. PLSRA 20240447 Pelly K and J, PLSRA 20240772 Taylor, PLSRA 20240445 Pelly J, PLSRA 2025-033 Haynes, and further that council refers bylaws 2601, 2602, 2603, and 2604 to the bylaw section of the agenda to stop up, close, and convey part of the original shore road allowances with respect to the said applications.
All those in favor? That is carried. There you go. Administration, this is you.
It would be me. So this is just in regard to a few of the previous reports that staff have brought forward relating to the procedural bylaw update. So notice was provided to the public through the local newspaper and the township website, which consisted of the bylaw in track changes, notification of feedback requesting from the public, the intended date of passing being today. And as of today, no comments have been received from the public. Proposed changes to the bylaw consisted of generally the strong mayor power legislation, the new agenda item delegation, notice of motion, regular council meeting dates, housekeeping, and some formatting changes. Attached to the agenda package is a chart that actually references previous reports, as well as the feedback from council, which was greatly appreciated. It did assist staff in making these changes quickly. And then we also forwarded the bylaw to legal, just seeking any concerns that maybe didn't jump out at us. Now I'm happy to touch base on a few items that council did have concerns with, or I can just address council's questions.
Let's just go to questions. Are there any questions?
Well, that was easy. I like the easy button. Okay, so moving to the resolution then. Moved by Deputy Mayor Shell, seconded by Councillor McKelvey, that council receives report 2601 administration procedural bylaw review as information, and that bylaw 2625 be referred to the bylaw section of the agenda for approval.
All those in favor? It's carried. This is 2605. You said 2625.
Sorry, to clarify, the bylaw was 2605.
Okay, that's fine. Just want to make sure the notes were right.
Yeah.
All right, we'll move to closed session.
Moved by Councillor Hannison, seconded by Councillor Sami. Be it resolved that that council proceed into closed session at 10:37 a.m. for the purpose of discussing one item pursuant to section 239(2)(e) of the Municipal Act 2001 as amended regarding litigation, potential litigation, including matters before an administrative tribunal affecting the municipality or local board litigation matter.
All those in favor? That is carried. Okay, we're back. You want to do the report from closed session?
So do you want me to go?
Go
Just
ahead.
proceed? Yep. Moved by Counselor Sisson, seconded by Counselor McKelvey. Be it resolved that closed session adjourned and open session resumed at 10:53 a.m.
All those in favor? It's carried. Okay. Now you'd like to complete this.
Moved by Counselor McKelvey, seconded by Counselor Sisson. Be it resolved that direction be given in closed session be approved.
All those in favor? It's carried. Bylaws.
Moved by Counselor McKelvey, seconded by Deputy Mayor Shell. Be it resolved that the following bylaws be received, read a first time, considered read a second and third time, and finally passed with the corporate seal affixed. Bylaw 2601, PLSRA 20240045. Bylaw 2602, PLSRA 2024047. Bylaw 2603, PLSRA 2024072. Bylaw 2604, PLSRA 2025033, and Bylaw 2605, the procedural bylaw.
All those in favor? It's carried. Confirming bylaw.
Moved by Counselor Saney, seconded by Counselor Ingram, that bylaw 2606, being a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of council held during its meeting of January 8th, 2026, be received, read a first time, considered read a second and third time, and finally passed with the corporate seal affixed.
All those in favor? It's carried. Adjournment.
Moved by Counselor Ingram, seconded by Counselor Saney, be it resolved that the January 8th, 2026 regular council meeting is hereby adjourned at 10:54 a.m.
All those in favor? That is carried. Thank you, everybody. Next regular council meeting is scheduled for January 22nd, 2026 at 9 a.m.